it's very important to establish your win rate, understand how to do it and how to do it right, because you need to measure it. You need to be able to say, like, we were here and now we're here. Once you're able to measure your win rate to effectively increase it, that's the tricky part. Right? That's one of the hardest things. And what we're advocating for is doing win-loss analysis the right way can make a significant impact on your win rate. When you are trying to do more with less and you need to show that you're doing more with less, increasing your win rate is a great way, if not the best way to do that.
Welcome to Win-Loss Analysis for Product Marketers. I'm Trenton Romph, the head of marketing at Closed.
And I'm Scott Knudson, head of sales enablement at Closed. Closed is the leading provider of win-loss analysis services and tech.
In this podcast, Scott and I are going to talk about how product marketers can use win-loss analysis to succeed at reaching their top goals and initiatives like win rate, sales enablement, product roadmap, marketing efficiency, competitive intelligence, and churn and retention.
All of that. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Cool. Trent, for this episode, who is this tailored to today? That's the question.
So it may come as a surprise. We're going to be talking to product marketers today.
I think that's a good place to start.
It sounds like the right place, right? So today we're going to talk about win rates specifically. How to use win-loss analysis as a product marketer to help your company improve win rates. In a recent study by PMA, product marketers ranked win rate as the number one KPI.
Easily,
yeah, which makes sense. They're helping the company establish positioning, messaging, they're helping train sales, they're helping with marketing to be in the right channels and the right content. When you do all that correctly, you should win more deals.
Yeah,
comes sense. Pretty naturally, right?
But it feels like there's a but coming.
You got it. But what we find in a lot of conversations we have with product marketers and in some polls we've done on our own and just in our experience
anecdotally,
yeah, exactly, that a lot of product marketers and other people in companies for that matter don't either understand win rate or they don't even have like a pulse on what the win rate of their company is.
Yeah.
So I wanted to dive into that a little bit. Like, it's a little confusing to me that your number one KPI is win rate. How can you have a number one KPI that you don't actually have a pulse on, like you can't measure? Yeah. So let's start there.
Sure.
Why don't they know what the company's win rate is?
Yeah, two reasons I think come to mind off the dome. One, I think there are multiple ways to measure a win rate, and so I think because there isn't one maybe clear and concise way, it's a little bit fuzzy, and so people are like, well, it's at this, I don't know, and so it kind of just fizzles away. I think maybe another reason, and obviously I'm coming from the sales side of things, I know on that side of the fence, they're a lot more geared towards certain metrics, like KPIs on that side of the fence tend to be drilled in really heavily.
Sure.
Maybe it's a different culture on the other side of things where hey, it's important to calculate win rate, but maybe you don't have the VP of sales breathing down your neck like, what's your win rate?
right, exactly.
Maybe on the product marketing and marketing side, that's less aggressively pushed on. Maybe? I don't know.
They don't define how they're measuring success as cleanly as a sales org.
Sure.
Where they literally are driving a revenue number, or you got to make this many demo sets or have this many opportunities come through your pipe, or your pipe needs to be this size. And the other part of it that I see is just like pure CRM hygiene. Like you and I have been in that world where we're trying to investigate Salesforce and you come across ops that should never have been created or that are still open because the sales rep's like holding on to the last glimmer of hope that they'll close it.
They could still convert.
Yeah, like 4 years later and this office is still open and I think I'm going to get it.
I'm going to get it.
Yeah. And then you look deeper and you're like, wait, so this sales rep's not even employed here anymore, but maybe we'll still close this up. And so a little bit of that as well, your CRM hygiene, sometimes people almost just throw their hands up in the air. They're like, well, it's not clean, so there's nothing we can do with this data anyway, so we're not even going to calculate it. And whatever number we do calculate it, I don't trust it and I don't believe it.
That actually, we'll get into this more later in the episode, but that concept of not really trusting the data that's in the CRM,
sure,
and so which leads to either inaction or lack of trust in that data. Like that's a big thing that closed focuses on with our win-loss kind of program.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's fascinating that for sure translates over into calculating your win rate.
Yeah. And then the other one I've seen just on the marketing side is Salesforce isn't free. And if you're a product marketer and you want to dive into Salesforce to calculate what the win rate is, you got to go convince somebody to give you a license. So sometimes it's like they literally just can't even log into the tool to calculate something.
Not only is it not free, it's also not cheap. Salesforce is not the cheapest tool around.
Right.
I would be interested of the people listening. I'd be interested to know. You typically, in my experience, it's usually just sales and sometimes another department like CS.
An ops or something.
Yeah, maybe one license for the entirety of marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
Does your marketing team, do you all have Salesforce licenses? If you're a product marketer, do you have a Salesforce license or a CRM, Dynamics, whatever it might be?
In my experience working with product marketers, very few of them have had a license. And if they did, they rarely logged into it. And if they did, they had a difficult time figuring out how to create a report or crunch it. And then as soon as they would see like messy hygiene stuff, they would just give up.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's one thing I do like about what we do is closed offers, that platform where you have cool pipeline analysis. It's not just win-loss analysis, but we can ingest all of your pipeline data that you want from your CRM and start to show you really quickly some analysis on that.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, Trey, because we're talking about win rate, and obviously we've talked about our platform Closed, which does win-loss analysis. Maybe not everybody knows what win-loss analysis is.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe you could come up with like a really clever and creative.
Maybe we've already talked about
a metaphor. No, this is completely inspired.
It's totally spontaneous.
What would be, just off the top of the head?
Well, if you had to just make me think of something.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, I mean the common one we throw out a lot is like film review in sports. So if you're a sports team, it's kind of crazy to think of a sports team out there right now that's not watching reviews of their games and even like other data that they're crunching to figure out, well, what caused us to win or lose. But I've been sharing it a little bit differently. Well, not totally differently, but I've been sharing it in this kind of metaphor of a gymnast, where you have this gymnast that wants to win a gold medal and she knows she's got to score as high as she can or perfect on the balance beam. Like that's her thing that she knows is going to get her the gold medal, right?
Yeah.
So she's on the balance beam and she's doing what she knows, and then she gets a coach to come and other experts to watch. And as they're watching her, they're telling her, hey, you rotated like 10 degrees too far to the left in that turn, or you jumped 1 inch too far back to set you up for the next move, or you just were a little too aggressive in that first leap, so then you weren't ready to just bounce back into the back flip. And anybody listening to me right now immediately knows I know nothing about gymnastics.
You sound like a gymnast expert,
exactly.
Clearly.
But this is a cool story because that gymnast has this goal in mind about winning, and she's getting coaches. She's probably watching video of herself doing these moves or watching other people that have perfected those moves and trying to incorporate what she's learning. And as she does that and trains not only like on the balance beam, but as she goes to the gym and trains specific muscle groups or certain moves, then she iterates and improves until she eventually is at the Olympics and does this perfect score on the balance beam. And that's what I like to relate to what we do for companies with buyer insights. So we go talk to buyers. That's what win-loss analysis is, right?
Right.
You go talk to your buyers on both won and lost deals, and you figure out what actually made you win and lose. How did sales impact it? How did marketing impact? How did pricing and packaging, how did the product impact, all of those different variables, and you can start to see trends popping up and understand where do we go next, right?
I think it's an important analogy too, because I think you could understand how a gymnast in your example would say, well, just go do it more, just keep practicing.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
what you do, more attempts and you get it, right?
Right.
And it's not to say that that wouldn't help to some degree.
Yeah.
But without having the proper insight of, oh no, it's not just doing it more. You actually have to fix some things.
Yeah.
Like you're doing a couple things wrong, and this is preventing you from getting that gold and having a perfect score, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I think a lot of times on the marketing side, it's like, hey, we just need more pipeline.
Absolutely.
That's the issue. It's like, we just don't have enough at-bats. And it's like, well, actually, that's not the issue necessarily.
Right.
Like maybe in some cases it is, but I think in many cases you are getting adequate pipeline, but you don't really know what's the differentiator between that gold medal and that silver.
Yeah.
And that's really what win-loss can enable is those specific acute, like, oh, this is why they're buying, and this is why they didn't buy and went with a competitor. And these are the things you can extrapolate that and figure out the exact things you need to fix in your process.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up because win rate's so critical, but a lot of times people think when they need to win more, they go immediately to, we just need to work more. Like we need to make more sales calls. We need to hire 20 more sales reps. And some of them are just going to totally tank. Others are going to carry it forward. But there's two ways to win more. Like you can either get more at bats or you can just hit the ball more.
Right.
And that's why I like personally to focus first on growth through improving win rate. So let's talk about that just for a little bit more. So like how do you calculate win rate, just in case anybody's listening and they're wondering, what do you guys mean exactly by win rate, and how should I calculate that? How should I be thinking about it?
Or if you're thinking, you know what, maybe I should calculate my win rate. Like I've been sitting on this long enough.
Right.
It's time to do it.
Yeah.
This is the way that we think is a great way to define it.
Yep.
So you can measure yourself. And the success of your company. With
and I've even seen some articles out there when I've just gone to figure out what is out there in Google land about win rate, and I've seen some articles that define the calculation wrong in my opinion. So I'd like to just spend a minute and talk about how we think about win rate. So we calculate it in two ways, which is also kind of interesting because most people think about a calculation in just one way. So the first one is win rate by opportunities count. And that one's pretty simple. It's how many closed ops do you have, and then you take how many you won and divide how many you won by the total closed ops, and that gives you your percentage. So for a quick example, I know this is going to be way boring, but we're going to do math here really quick, but we're going to make it really easy.
This is a math podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, he doesn't know anything about gymnastics or math. We can tell. Okay. So you have 100 closed ops, right? In your total pipe. You won 50 of them. The math's pretty straightforward there. You have a 50% win rate.
Feels like 50%.
50% feels like we're right there. That's how I did math in high school.
You are good at math.
That feels right. And then the other way to calculate it that very few people actually do it this way is win rate by revenue. And I'll talk to you about how you calculate that and then tell you a little bit just like why you should do it both ways. So win rate by revenue, let's take that same 100 ops example, right? So you have 100 closed ops that represent $1 million in pipeline. And then you won 50 of them, right? So you have a 50% win rate. You're like, oh, that's great. That's amazing. We're winning 50% of the deals that we come across. But you always know when the but's coming. But the 50 you won were only $100,000 in revenue. So your revenue win rate is only 10%.
Right.
Then you're immediately like in kind of scary land. Like you're really not closing as much revenue as you need to have a healthy business. And when you cut it like that, you immediately start to see a glaring problem that you probably can't close worth your life in enterprise deals, right? Like larger ACV, annual contract value deals, you're getting crushed.
Well, and this is why it's important to understand both, because in one sense, if you're just going off of, hey, what's our win rate? 50%. Hey, we're doing great.
We're great.
We're doing good. So that gives you a false sense of security. So you're not impacting. If you only go on the other one, which is like, hey, our win rate is 10%. We're not closing anything. It's like, well, no, you are closing things. You're just not closing the amount that you're forecasting or that you want to.
Right.
You can expand that open to analysis and be like, okay, well, we are closing. So what is it about these deals that we are closing ones we are? Well, we're closing smaller ACV. Well, what else can we learn from that, right? And this is, I think, where win-loss analysis actually takes a seat in the driver's seat, really, where once you are able to identify, like, okay, here's a data point. We're winning 50%, but we're not winning anything over a certain amount. that begs the question, why?
Right.
Are we not a fit for enterprise? Are we not trained to sell into enterprise? Do we just have bad sales reps, right? But like it opens up all these questions, and at the end of the day, most people just don't know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this is exactly where it makes sense to talk about like how win-loss analysis is done right. Because there's one way to do win-loss analysis where in your example, you see these metrics and you start to immediately show from just the math, we're bad at enterprise. Like we're bad at closing large size deals. And so then maybe you dive into your CRM like we talked about, and you do like a big report where you're taking the pick list field that's filled out by sales reps.
Oh, the pick list.
Oh, the loss reason pick list, right? And it says like pricing, product. And you're smart, so you segment that as a product marketer or an ops person. You segment that to, okay, we're losing enterprise deals because of pricing. You still have no idea what that actually means.
Right.
Like, is it just the pure dollar amount? We have data that shows you're just as likely to lose a deal for just the actual dollar amount price as you are to lose the deal based on the way your pricing and packaging is structured, like in the pricing terms, the pricing model itself, like is it an annual or a monthly contract? Like you're just as likely to lose the deal on either of those factors. So if you're thinking it's just pricing, we should go discount, you actually probably don't need to discount. You could come over here and be more creative with licensing or fencing product features, or the contract terms themselves.
Yeah, this is something we tout a lot, especially on the close side of things, which is that the pricing option on pick lists means almost nothing. Like it is an indication of something that like price did factor into some degree, but to your point, Trent, like was it implementation was too expensive? Was it the packaging was not formatted to their needs? If you were to ask them, was it too expensive or did you just not have budget? Right. Or did you really feel like the value of goods and services you're getting was not worth the price point offered, right? Yeah. You have no way of knowing that based on a pick list that just says pricing, right? Yeah. And by the way, one key driver could be the sales process just wasn't very good. Sure. And if you're the sales rep who doesn't maybe necessarily want to take accountability for that, or just doesn't really know. Sure. You might just say, well, pricing. They went with a cheaper competitor. It was pricing.
But it's really easy for a buyer to tell a salesperson, we just don't have budget right now. And so they mark no budget or pricing. Yeah. And
in fact, I remember a specific scenario where you and I were on a demo of a tool, and that exact scenario happened where you're like, hey, like pricing is actually like a big issue. And we got off the call, and I was like, so what do you think? You're like, well, actually, like I don't trust this technology at all. Exactly. Like it's a X, Y, and Z. You kind of went into depth.
You expounded
way more, totally. Right? And it's not that you were withholding the information from the seller necessarily. Sure. It was just really easy to be like, like we just, that was the easiest excuse to be like, we're probably not going to buy this, because it didn't not factor in. It was also because of that. Yeah. But when you pulled back, the curtain, it was like, no, it's actually all this other stuff in addition to price. If those things weren't there, like, we really like this and we love the technology, we just can't get budget for it right now. The sales rep could come in and work that deal and there's a pathway to success there, right? Yeah. But so often does that pricing pick list thing not amount to a whole lot, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen some studies out there where doing win-loss analysis the right way, so not just like basing it on a pick list field in the CRM, or not just basing it on internal rep feedback. You need to go deep with buyer insights, and we've shared why here. But win-loss analysis done rigorously the right way. There have been some studies, like Gartner shared a study that they did where companies that do it, they can improve win rates by as much as 50%. And Accenture also had a study that wasn't as thorough where they said win rates typically increase for companies doing thorough win-loss analysis by 18%. So just really quick, we're going to do another math problem. This one's a little more complicated, but just to give an idea to a product marketer right now wondering, like, especially in this kind of a economic environment we're in currently, where they're wondering, well, I got to do more with less. How do I do that? focus on win rate.
Right.
And I'll give you just a clear example of that. So if you have 100 million in annual sales revenue and a 20% win rate, and you get a 10% improvement in that win rate, so that means you go to 22% on your win rate, you just added an additional 10 million in annual sales revenue by a 2% tick up on your win rate. So that's what I mean. That's where win-loss analysis comes in. It will help clearly show you the roadmap to winning more, and will show you which of the certain levers, is it sales, is it marketing, is it pricing, all these things, do we need to pull to make buyers engage with us more and actually close deals?
Yeah, I think to recap thus far, it's very important to establish your win rate, understand how to do it and how to do it right, because you need to measure it. You need to be able to say, like, we were here and now we're here, right?
Yeah.
Once you're able to measure your win rate, to effectively increase it, that's the tricky part. Right. That's one of the hardest things. And what we're advocating for is doing win-loss analysis the right way.
Yeah.
Can make a significant impact on your win rate.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think, to your point, when you are trying to do more with less and you need to show that you're doing more with less.
Yeah.
Increasing your win rate is a great way, if not the best way, to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So really there's kind of two ways when you get this kind of feedback to start impacting win rate. And you can do them both simultaneously, and we'll talk about some of them, but you can either fix the bad, like immediately go to the stuff where you're red flags, it's bad, like this sales rep just didn't even follow up. Right. And that's why we didn't go with you.
Totally.
Like fix that fast for sure. Or you can perfect the good and kind of double down on your strengths. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of those things. Would you fix the bad first or double down on strengths first?
Yeah. I think in my role in enablement, where I'm building out training programs and I'm working with sales leadership, I look at the bad first, for sure.
Yeah.
Buyers are fickle and they're emotional, and all it can take is one, hey, that guy just rubbed me wrong,
right.
Or that, that the interaction with that gal, it just didn't go the way I wanted, right?
Yeah.
They weren't speaking to my needs, right? Yeah. It's so important for sellers to understand, hey, this specifically lost us to that deal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So one thing I actually love about the Close platform is, as these interviews get published, they get distributed essentially to everyone.
Right.
And so all the sales reps, they're anticipating these deals because they want to know, hey, what did this other rep do good and bad, and how can I fix it? And then I can't wait for them, because I can say, okay, what parts of my curriculum are becoming stale? What parts do I need to, we didn't think about that.
Yep.
So new hires don't make those mistakes.
Yep. Right. I've been in this world, and I know other product marketers have. You get insights about why you win and lose. And then you sit there and you have this moment of panic attack where you're like, I need to be a genius right now because we're losing because of this feature and this feature on the product, or we're losing because of pricing, or we're losing because our sales process is not as good as somebody else, or marketing isn't doing this thing, or whatever, right? And they literally feel like, I have to go and solve all of these problems. I have to go convince product that they need to change this feature. I got to go convince sales, or that sales rep specifically, to do things differently. That's impossible.
Right. It's a huge undertaking.
If you could do all of that, you shouldn't be a product marketer at a company. You should go start your own company and become a billionaire.
right. Yeah.
And so product marketers and people doing win-loss, they need to think about it a little bit differently. Yeah, like you can be the linchpin, you can be the person getting all the win-loss feedback, driving the program, but don't funnel it all to you and hold it there and think, I'm going to go problem solve all of these things, because you just don't know all the background. You don't know everything going on with the product. Like the perfect example is if you start to see, man, we could improve win rate if the product just built these two features, right?
Right.
But you have no idea how difficult those features are for your product team to do. You don't know if building one of those features puts you in a new competitive landscape that the like C-suite is a little hesitant to go into because maybe they're partnering with that company or whatever. Yeah. Like there's so much. So don't silo it. Send all of that data to the appropriate stakeholders, and then in their purview, just drive home to them like, hey, let's focus on winning more. Let's help each other win more. What can we do in your world? And what do you need more of from me? And then come back and say, this thing's really interesting. I want to understand it better. Right. And then all you do is guide the win-loss program to get more insight on that thing that you have a hypothesis that'll improve win rate. Not sitting there thinking to yourself, I'm going to go sit by a lake and just be alone in nature, and the inspiration's going to come to me.
Right.
And I'm going to be able to solve every single problem this company has, and I'm going to be the go-to-market hero that everyone wants me to be. Like, it's impossible. Like, it literally isn't how you should do it.
I think what's important to understand is most department leaders will act if they see the data.
Yes.
Right? Like everyone
They
is data.
should.
Yeah, they should, right?
Totally should.
Everyone's data driven, but I think everyone has experienced that squeaky wheel problem where
Right.
some sales rep is like they walk over to the someone in product or whatever, and they say, "Oh, if only we had this, we would have won this deal. Like, can we make this? Can we make this? Can we make this?" Right?
Yeah.
They say, "Okay, we're gonna do this." If you're saying it's that systemic, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out it's not. Nobody really cared. Nobody bought it ever. It's one person bought it. It's like, hey, we just shifted our whole roadmap thinking,
Right.
Whatever, right? Or if only we invested in these lead sources, or we did X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
I think this idea of like in the product marketing role, your job is to build a mounting case to improve your win rate and to provide clear and concise data
Yep.
to help people make good business decisions.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you go to an enablement person and say, hey, here's some of the trends we're seeing from these interviews, you should be seeing them too, but I've taken the time to analyze it a little more.
Yeah.
Here's some recommendations that you could give potentially.
Yep.
Go forth.
Yeah.
And manage your business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I would look at that and be like, great.
Yeah.
I'm looking to onboard reps faster and have them close deals quicker. Any information I can have to make them do that more successfully,
Right.
I'm all for it.
Yep.
Every department leader has limited bandwidth, right? And so if you can come in and say like, here's all this great data to help you do your job better, great. Everyone loves that. That's a win for everyone.
Yeah.
Where I think without that, what you're left with is like, hey, I think you should do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, now it's based on like my opinion versus yours, and are you second guessing the way I'm doing things, right? So like coming in where it's like, hey, this is not me necessarily. This is what the data is suggesting.
Yeah.
And here are some potential solutions.
Yeah.
I think is a much healthier and a much more appreciated way to solve business problems.
Yeah. And when you say the data, like specifically, we're talking about the buyer,
Right.
like the most important person in the business.
Yeah.
The buyer telling you what you need to improve on, right?
Right.
It's not just like, hey, we scraped the whole internet and there's some data here.
Right.
Or I crunched the CRM and I've got some data. It's like, no, the buyer literally shared this example. So we have one cool customer story that I'll share around this. So we have a customer called Smart Bear. They've been using us for a while, and Jennifer Lowenthal is the director of product marketing there. She shared this story with me where they saw this shift in their market where they were originally selling to like a very technical type buyer that liked to automate and build tools themselves because they knew how to code very well and they were very technical. And the market started to shift, and they were all of a sudden introduced to a new buyer type that wasn't as technical, right? So when they were going to market with this very technical buyer, every sales demo, they highlighted this one feature that this very technical buyer loved. And that was the demo. Like every single rep would go into the demo and highlight this feature because they were winning on it. And when they started to do win-loss analysis with us, it started to highlight that when this new buyer that's not as technical was sitting through the demo, they would tell us, that's a cool feature, but I'm really disappointed that they didn't have this other feature that I really care about, right? And they got the feedback from a few of the buyer interviews, and Jennifer and her product marketing team were immediately like, this sucks, because guess what? Like, we do have that feature, and we're actually really good at it.
Right.
But
they're not feeling that.
No, they weren't even showing it because the sales reps were so into the old buyer that they were showing this one feature that the new buyer didn't care anything about. So as soon as they saw this, they changed the demo so that when this new buyer type was there, they didn't talk about the old feature. And within like a week, they saw an impact in win rate because they just made that really simple change.
Right.
But it had been a blind spot for a few months in this kind of shifting market.
Yeah, I think that's the that is something we drum on a lot about, which is this idea of like that insight would never have come up in a pick list.
Right. Yeah.
And would be really hard to ascertain on your own.
Yep.
The amount of individual work you would have to do to get that
Yeah.
would be a lot. That's all you would be doing,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And so part of the closed value proposition is like, hey,
Yep.
we're really good at getting this information,
Yep.
extracting it, and then distributing it out so that within a week
Yeah.
you can hear it, figure it out, make a change, and impact your win rate.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just like that.
Just immediately. Exactly.
So let's summarize really quick. We did this kind of halfway through. So for those listening, step one, if you don't know your win rate, figure out your win rate. We talked about, there's kind of two ways to do it. Again, we encourage you to do both. Figure out what your win rate is, because ultimately that's going to be how you measure yourself in your role.
Yeah. And if you are overwhelmed by like the CRM hygiene or the amount of pipeline, segment it. Like split your funnel is a common phrase that some people are using right now that I like, where, okay, well then go focus in on a product, or go focus in on a region or a price range, or where you already kind of feel like anecdotally you might be having a problem, and do the win rate calculation on that to figure out what's going on, right?
Right. So that's step one, figure it out. Yeah, I love segmented. Yeah, the bigger you get, the more complicated that gets.
Yeah, totally.
But it's important, right?
Yep.
Number two is start building, if you don't have one, a comprehensive win-loss program.
Right.
Like we preach this from the high, from the rooftops, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We would love to help you in that,
Yeah.
right? We fundamentally believe that having interviews of your buyers and people who didn't buy
Mm-hmm.
is so pivotal in understanding why you're winning losing deals, that it's worth investing
Yep.
in the resources to ascertain that. We think we do a pretty good job of that,
Yeah.
and we have a pretty cool software platform that helps distribute that. But either way,
Right.
build a win-loss program so
Yeah.
you're starting to understand feedback from your buyers. We think that inevitably you'll come and realize like, wow, this is a lot of work. Maybe we'll reach out to close. But either way, like it's a start. Yeah.
Just start.
And then, yeah, what we talked about when you're evaluating your win rate, using those two key features, fixing the bad and perfecting the good. We didn't talk as much about perfecting the good,
Sure.
but I think everyone understands what that means, right? Like, oh, here's where we're winning, right? One example I like to give is you can find out through buyer feedback that people really like a particular feature.
Yeah.
And you might come to find that, wait a minute, we're not highlighting that feature anywhere, that we have
Right.
multilingual support or we have a particular integration, right? And now we're going to put that on our website because this is a competitive differentiator. We know our
Yep.
competitor doesn't have this.
Yeah, exactly.
Now all of a sudden, somebody looking for that sees on your website that you have it. That's a lead,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's a quick and easy way to double down on a win,
Mhm.
right? And enhance that, right? It's not something you're doing wrong, but that's a way to showcase your wins. Or hey, we're
Yeah.
doing this really well.
Right.
Let's continue. Let's make that an emphasis point,
Yeah.
right? And find all those areas that you're doing really well. And then
Yeah.
of course, fixing the bad. That's a never ending.
Right.
There's always bad that always needs to be fixed. Where Trent, where can our listeners go if they want to understand more about win-loss programs, how to get started? Where should they go?
Yeah, if we have a great guide that will walk you through how to set up a program, how to get executive buy-in, all that kind of stuff. You can find that on winlossexperts.com.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, until next time, Scott.
Until next time, Trent.